She didn't scream. That was the first thing he noticed. Most kids, alone at a bus station at 4 in the morning, would have screamed. They would have cried, or run, or at least looked scared. But this little girl, sitting on a hard plastic chair with a pink backpack clutched to her chest like a life preserver, just looked up at him with the steadiest brown eyes he'd ever seen and said, "Are you here to take me somewhere bad?" And Kieran Blackwell, who ran half the criminal operations on the eastern seaboard, who had made grown men beg for mercy in 3 different languages, who had not flinched once in 14 years, paused. "No," he said. "Okay," she said, and she slid off the chair and stood up, like that settled it. "Before we get into what happened next, and trust me, you are going to want to hear every single word of this. If you're new here, welcome to Sadie's Romance Library. Hit that subscribe button, because this is exactly the kind of story we live for. And if you've been here before, you already know, the best stories are the ones nobody saw coming. This one? Nobody saw this coming." Kieran Blackwell did not take the bus. He had 3 cars, a driver named Pete who didn't ask questions, and a standing rule that he never went anywhere without at least one man watching his back. That night, he was breaking 2 of those rules. No Pete, no backup, because the meeting he'd just left at the Harbor Freight warehouse on Route 9 was the kind of meeting that could not have witnesses. It had gone badly, not violently badly, just the kind of quietly, coldly badly that meant Kieran would be making some difficult phone calls in the morning. The kind of meeting where handshakes happened, and smiles happened, and the whole time Kieran could feel the shape of the lie underneath the handshakes, and the smiles like a stone under ice. He was driving himself home, rare. He'd taken the long way, the back roads through Culver Junction, because he needed the dark and the quiet, and the 45 minutes of nobody talking at him. The Culver Junction bus terminal was not a place anyone went on purpose. It was one of those transit stops that existed on maps, but not really in anyone's reality. A single-story concrete building with fluorescent lights that buzzed, a parking lot that needed repaving in 2007 and hadn't gotten it, and a schedule board that showed 4 buses a day, none of them after 9 p.m. It was now 4:17 in the morning. Kieran pulled in because he needed coffee from the vending machine he'd clocked through the window. That was the only reason. He was not a man who stopped for things. He was not a man who got sentimental about bus stations or flickering lights or small girls sitting alone in the dark. He pulled in. He saw her. He sat in the car for 11 seconds. He counted without meaning to, and then he got out. She was maybe 7, maybe 8. Small for whatever age she was, with dark hair pulled into 2 braids, one of which had mostly come loose. Her sneakers were the kind with Velcro straps and a small rainbow on the toe. Her backpack was pink with a silver star on the zipper pull, and she was absolutely, completely alone. "Are you here to take me somewhere bad?" "No," Kieran said. "Okay." She stood up and looked at him, waiting, like he was a problem she'd already decided to trust him to solve. Kieran looked around the terminal, empty. The man behind the plexiglass ticket window had his head down, either asleep or pretending to be. The parking lot held Kieran's car and a dented minivan with a cracked taillight. "Where's your mom?" Kieran asked. The girl, she had to be someone's daughter, someone's whole world, looked down at her sneakers for exactly 1 second. Then she looked back up. "She went to get food," she said, 3 hours ago. The words hit the way words like that hit when you actually let them land. 3 hours. This child had been sitting here, in this empty building, at 4 in the morning, waiting for 3 hours. "She's not coming back," the girl said. Not like she was crying, like she was reporting something she'd already finished processing. "I think she forgot. What's your name?" "Addie, Addie," Kieran repeated. He looked around the terminal again. Nobody. Just the buzzing lights and the dead schedule board and the guy behind the plexiglass who was definitely asleep. "How old are you?" 7 3/4. 7 3/4. Kieran had done things in his life that he wouldn't describe to a priest. He had sat across tables from men who were planning terrible things and helped them plan those things more efficiently. He had once watched someone get hurt very badly and felt nothing, except a clinical interest in how quickly it was resolved. He felt something now. He didn't know what to name it, but it sat in the center of his chest and it was not nothing. "Okay, Addie," he said. I'm going to get you some food from that machine, and then we're going to figure out what to do next. Sound good? She considered him. 7 3/4, and she was genuinely evaluating whether he was trustworthy. Do you have quarters? She asked. I have quarters. Okay, she said. The peanut butter crackers are the best ones. He got her 2 packs of peanut butter crackers, a bottle of water, and a bag of pretzels because he didn't know which she'd actually want. He got himself a coffee that was mostly hot water with brown coloring, but he drank it anyway. They sat in the plastic chairs. She ate the crackers first. She was neat about it, careful, catching the crumbs in her palm and then depositing them in the trash can 3 feet away with a precision that suggested someone had taught her to be tidy. Do you know your address? Kieran asked. 47 Linden Street. Apartment 2C. Good. Do you know anyone who could come get you? Family? A neighbor? Addie thought about this with the seriousness of a child doing long division. My grandma, she finally said. But she doesn't have a car. Do you know her number? It's in my mom's phone. Kieran did not swear out loud. He did it very thoroughly in his head. Okay, he said. Is there anyone else? She shook her head. Then she stopped. There's my school, but it's nighttime, yeah. He looked at her. Addie, who usually takes care of you? My mom, she said. And then quietly, like she was admitting something. But sometimes she forgets things. She's been forgetting a lot lately. Kieran sat with that for a moment. He had resources. He had people he could call who would handle this, quietly, efficiently, no questions. He had people who could find this woman in 20 minutes, could find the grandmother, could have Addie somewhere safe before sunrise. He also had people who could not, under any circumstances, know he had been at a bus station in Culver Junction at 4 a.m. the night after the Harbor Freight meeting. He pulled out his personal phone, the one that wasn't logged. He typed 47 Linden Street, Apartment 2C into a search function that was not Google. What came back was not nothing. The lease for that apartment was held by a woman named Carla Devlin, 31 years old. Carla Devlin had a record, minor stuff, mostly, but the address had been flagged 8 months ago in connection with a larger case. A name was attached to the flag, a name Kieran recognized. He looked at Addie, eating her pretzels with both hands, feet swinging because they didn't reach the floor. He put his phone in his pocket. Addie, he said, I'm going to make sure you get somewhere safe tonight, okay? But I need to make a phone call first. Can you stay right here? You're not going to leave? No, I'm going to be right outside that door. She looked at the door, looked at him. Can I come? Sure. They stood outside in the parking lot, the night air cool, and carrying the smell of wet asphalt and somewhere distant, something burning. Addie stood next to him with her backpack on both shoulders and watched the highway like it was television. Kieran made the call. It rang twice. Then, do you know what time it is? I need a favor, Kieran said. Not the usual kind. A pause. What kind? I need to find a woman named Eleanor Devlin, grandmother, no car. I need her address in the next 10 minutes, Kieran. I have a child, he said. And then, because that sounded wrong, I found a child. She's 7. She's been sitting in the Culver Junction bus station for 3 hours. I need to find her grandmother. Silence. Then, give me 8 minutes. He stood in the parking lot with Addie and waited. She had stopped watching the highway and was now watching him with that same evaluating look. Are you a policeman? She asked. No? Are you a bad guy? He looked down at her. 7 3/4. Honest as a splinter. I'm complicated, he said. She thought about this. My mom says complicated means you're not sure yet. Your mom might be right. The phone buzzed. An address 12 blocks away. Eleanor Devlin, 73 years old, ground floor unit, no car, listed as Addie's emergency contact on a school form filed 6 months ago. Get in the car, Addie, Kieran said. She got in. He drove 12 blocks through a city that was mostly sleeping. Addie sat in the back seat and narrated every traffic light they passed, informing him of their color with the dedication of a co-pilot reading instruments. Green, green. Yellow, that means slow down. Red, red. I know what they mean, Kieran said. Some people run the red ones, she said gravely. My mom does sometimes. He knocked on Eleanor Devlin's door at 4:43 in the morning. The lights were already on. The door opened on a woman in her 70s, with white hair and reading glasses, pushed up on her head, and the expression of someone who had been awake and worried and praying for something exactly like this. She saw Addie. She made a sound, just one sound, not a word, and dropped to her knees in the doorway and pulled the girl into her arms. Addie, who had not cried once in the 3 hours she'd been alone, who had not cried when she talked about her mother, who had answered every question with the contained, steady practicality of a child, who had learned early that falling apart didn't help. Addie started to cry, just quietly, into her grandmother's shoulder. Kieran stood on the doorstep and looked at the streetlight across the road. Eleanor Devlin looked up at him over her granddaughter's shoulder. "Who are you?" she asked, not suspicious, just needing to know. "Someone who stopped," Kieran said. She held his gaze for a moment. Then she nodded, once, like that was enough. "Thank you," she said. He was back in his car and 3 blocks away before he let himself think about what he'd just seen in the system when he'd searched the address. Before he let himself think about the name attached to the flag. Rennick. Victor Rennick. Mid-level distributor in a supply chain that Kieran's organization had been watching for 14 months. The flag on Carla Devlin's address was because she was involved. Peripheral, probably. Courier level. But involved. And if Carla Devlin was involved with Rennick, and Rennick knew that Carla Devlin's daughter had been found by Kieran Blackwell at 4 in the morning at the Culver Junction bus station, his phone rang. "Unknown number," he answered. "Long night, Mr. Blackwell." The voice was smooth, careful, the kind of voice that had been trained to not give anything away. "I don't know who this is," Kieran said. "No, but you know what I am, and you know the woman who left her daughter at that bus station tonight." Kieran said nothing. "She didn't forget," the voice said. "That was a message. For you." He pulled the car over. "What message? That we know what you're doing. We've been watching you for 6 weeks, Mr. Blackwell. The warehouse, the meetings, the calls. We know about Harbor Freight. We know about the arrangement you were going to make tonight before it fell through. You had the meeting fall through. We moved the pieces." Kieran sat in the dark car on the empty street and thought about a 7-year-old girl eating peanut butter crackers with careful hands. "You used a child," he said. His voice was very quiet, the voice he used when he was past the point of performance. "We needed your attention. You have it," Kieran said, "but not the way you wanted it. Mr. Blackwell, where is Carla Devlin right now?" Silence. "That's not relevant to." "It's the only relevant thing," Kieran said. "You used her daughter as a prop, a 7-year-old girl alone in the middle of the night to send me a message. Where is the mother?" "She's safe." "That's not an answer. She made a choice to cooperate with. She left her daughter alone at a bus station for 3 hours, Kieran said. "That's not cooperation. That's leverage. You're holding something over her." Another silence. This one was different, the silence of someone recalibrating. "I'll call you back," Kieran said. He hung up. He sat for a moment. Then he called Pete. "I need you," he said. "Bring Harmon. And don't tell anyone where you're going." While he waited, he made 2 more calls. The first located Carla Devlin within 4 minutes. A motel on Route 11, room 6, checked in under a fake name that wasn't hard to find once you knew how to look. Rennick's people, apparently, had not been briefed on how good Kieran's people were at exactly this kind of thing. The second call was to a woman named Frances, who ran a licensed crisis placement service and had done quiet favors for Kieran twice before without needing details. "I have a child," Kieran said, 7 years old. Her mother may be taken into protective custody in the next few hours. Her grandmother is Eleanor Devlin, this address. The grandmother is the right placement, but she'll need support. Legal support, financial support, whatever the process requires. Can you handle it? "Is this going to end up in the news?" Frances asked. "No." "Okay, send me the address." Pete arrived with Harmon at 5:15. They drove to the Route 11 motel. Room 6 had a deadbolt and a chain lock that Harmon dealt with in under 40 seconds. Carla Devlin was inside, awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, still dressed like she'd never considered sleeping. She was thin in the way people get thin when they're not eating right, and she had dark circles under her eyes and Addie's same brown eyes, wide and watching. She saw Kieran. "Oh God," she said. "Oh God, is Addie." "Addie is with her grandmother," Kieran said. "She's safe." Carla Devlin covered her face with both hands. Her shoulders shook. She was crying, really crying, the kind with no performance in it. Kieran sat down in the chair across from the bed and waited. They said they just needed one night, she said finally. They said if I just left her there for an hour, just so you'd find her and they'd know it was you. Her voice broke. I thought you'd just call the police. I thought the police would come and someone would take care of her and I'd— What do they have on you? Kieran asked. She looked up. What is Rennick holding over you? Her mouth opened and closed. How do you know? It doesn't matter how I know. What is it? She was quiet for a long moment. Then, my brother. He borrowed money, the wrong kind of money. And when he couldn't pay back, she stopped. They said if I did this one thing, the debt was clear. My brother would be safe. Addie would be safe. She laughed, and it had nothing happy in it. I left my daughter alone in the middle of the night because I thought it would make her safe. Kieran sat with that. The logic of desperation. He'd seen it before. The math people did when they were cornered, when every option looked bad, and you just tried to calculate which kind of bad you could survive. Your brother's name, he said. She hesitated. Danny. Danny Devlin. Where is he? I don't know. They have him somewhere. They said, okay. Kieran stood. Carla, I'm going to tell you something and I need you to hear it clearly. You're going to cooperate with some people in the morning, attorneys. They're going to ask you questions about Rennick's operation, and you're going to answer honestly. All of it. Can you do that? They'll hurt Danny. They won't, Kieran said, because by the time those conversations happen, Danny Devlin is going to be somewhere Rennick can't reach him. That I can promise you. She stared at him. Why would you do that? Kieran thought about a girl with 2 braids, one mostly undone, sitting in a plastic chair at 4 a.m, asking if he was a bad guy. Because someone should have done it sooner, he said. He found Danny Devlin in a storage facility off exit 14, malnourished and scared but alive, before sunrise. He left 2 of his people with the boy and drove back through a city that was just starting to think about waking up. The unknown number called again at 6:45. Mr. Blackwell, we need to discuss. No, Kieran said. We're done discussing. You have 12 hours to tell me who in my organization tipped you about Harbor Freight. After that, I stop asking nicely. You don't have the leverage to. I have Carla Devlin, Kieran said, and everything she knows about Rennick's operation. I have Danny Devlin, who you are no longer holding. And I have the name of the motel where your people have been running their communications for the past 3 weeks. Yes, I know about the motel, which means I have a significant number of things that Rennick would prefer not become public at the same time. Silence. 12 hours, Kieran said again, and hung up. He went home. He slept for 3 hours, which was more than he usually got. When he woke up, there were 2 messages. One from Pete, confirming that the name had come through. Someone inside, middling level, who had been skimming and covering it with Rennick's information. That situation would be handled quietly. The other message was from Frances. Eleanor Devlin had been connected with a family attorney. The process was in motion. Addie was still with her grandmother. Carla Devlin had entered a voluntary program and agreed to speak to the appropriate people. And there was a third thing, not a message exactly, a text from an unsaved number, sent at 7:12 in the morning. Addie says to tell you the red ones taste better. He looked at that for a while. The peanut butter crackers. There'd been 2 packs, one with a red wrapper, one with a yellow. She'd said the peanut butter crackers were the best ones. She hadn't specified the red. She'd figured it out by the time she got to her grandmother's. Kieran put his phone down. He looked at the ceiling. He thought about a girl with a silver star on her zipper pull, and steady brown eyes, and the specific courage of a child who had been let down enough times to decide that falling apart was not useful, but who had still, when she reached her grandmother's doorway, finally allowed herself to cry. I'm complicated, he'd said. My mom says complicated means you're not sure yet. He picked the phone up again. He typed, I'll remember that, and sent it. He made the difficult phone calls that morning. He dealt with the Harbor Freight fallout with the cold efficiency that 14 years had made instinctive. He had 3 meetings, 2 of them unpleasant in different ways. By 2 in the afternoon, the situation had resolved into something manageable, not clean, because nothing in his world was ever clean, but manageable. At 4:15, Frances called. "The grandmother is asking about you," she said. "She wants to send something. A thank you. I told her I'd ask." Kieran thought about Eleanor Devlin on her knees in the doorway, making that single wordless sound. "Tell her no," he said. "Tell her I don't need anything." She seemed like she needed to do something. "Tell her to take care of the girl," Kieran said. "That's enough." Frances was quiet for a moment. "You know this is going to complicate things. If Rennick finds out you got personally involved." "Rennick," Kieran said, "is going to have significantly larger problems than me in about 72 hours. Let him find out whatever he wants." He meant it. The information from Carla Devlin, combined with what Kieran already had, combined with the name he'd just gotten about the harbor freight leak, it was enough. It would take some time and it would not be simple, but it was enough. He went back to work. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday, he was in the back seat of his car on the way to a meeting when Pete slowed down on Linden Street for a red light. It was after school hours. The sidewalk had the specific energy of late afternoon in a residential neighborhood: bikes, noise, the particular freedom of kids between 3 p.m. and dinner. He saw her, pink backpack, silver star on the zipper pull, both braids intact this time, and a new pair of sneakers, white with a small yellow star on the toe. She was walking with an older woman who moved carefully, one hand on a cane, Eleanor Devlin, going at the pace of someone who made sure the person next to them never felt rushed. Addie was talking. She talked with her whole body, apparently, hands moving, head tilting, some story requiring full physical commitment to tell. Eleanor was listening with the expression of someone who genuinely wanted to hear every word. The light changed. Pete moved. Kieran looked out the back window. Addie didn't see him. She was mid-story, one hand making a shape in the air that might have been a bird or an airplane or something she'd invented herself. Her grandmother was nodding. Kieran faced forward. "Everything good?" Pete asked, not turning around. "Yeah," Kieran said. Eyes on the road. Pete drove. The city moved past the windows. Some things, Kieran had learned a long time ago, didn't need to be complicated. Some things were just what they were. A man who stopped. A child who asked the right question. An old woman on her knees in a doorway. The most important promises are the ones nobody sees you make. What would you have done if you'd found her there? Drop your answer in the comments, and tell us where in the world you're watching from. If this story hit you somewhere real, please give it a like and subscribe to Sadie's Romance Library. We're here every week with stories that remind you that people are stranger and braver and more complicated than they seem. See you next time.